The morning sun had only begun to climb, spreading warm stripes of light across the cracked pavements of Rosewood City, when a moment occurred that would forever reshape the lives of three strangers. A little boy with dust on his shoes and hunger in his eyes stood outside a half-closed bakery, clutching a torn school bag whose zipper no longer worked. His tiny shoulders trembled from the cold breeze, and when the tall, sharply dressed man stepped out of his black SUV, adjusting his cufflinks with his usual stern confidence, he heard the boy's timid voice carrying an unbearable weight of innocence and desperation. The boy stood on his toes, reaching toward the shopkeeper's counter through the narrow opening, and quietly asked if he could please take the expired bread nobody wanted, because his mummy hadn't eaten in 2 days, and he just wanted to share something with her. The words froze the air around everyone who heard them. The man, Leander Cross, a single father and one of the toughest CEOs in the city, found himself stopped mid-stride, struck by a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Something in those small words tore through the walls he had built around himself. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Stories of Kindness. It truly helps these stories reach more hearts. As the shopkeeper hesitated, embarrassed, and unsure how to respond, Leander couldn't look away. He'd spent years running Cross Innovations, a company that shaped half the tech in the region, but he could not remember the last time something pierced him like this. His days normally began with strict schedules and endless meetings. Today was supposed to be no different. A high-stakes investor conference, a product launch in 48 hours, and his daughter Tess's science project due the same afternoon. But somehow, everything in his world paused the moment he saw that hungry child asking for stale bread for his starving mother. The boy's name was Finan Hale, though Leander wouldn't know that for a while. What he did know, what he could not ignore, was the shaking of the boy's hands and the way he kept swallowing hard, trying to hide how hungry he was himself. It was daytime, yet he carried the heavy look of someone who had walked through a long night. Leander found himself standing still, sensing echoes of memories he thought he had buried. Years ago, before he wore tailored suits and controlled boardrooms, he knew exactly what it felt like to be hungry, frightened, and uncertain if there would be another day with food on the table. Life had changed for him only because someone else had shown unexpected kindness when he least deserved it. And now, watching Finan plead for expired bread resurrected a part of him he had tried to forget. He watched the boy clutch the torn bag to his chest, apologizing as if needing food was a crime. The bakery owner finally handed him a small plastic-wrapped loaf, hard as stone, unsellable but edible. The boy took it gratefully, almost reverently, as if it were gold. That was when Leander felt something shift deep inside him, a quiet tug urging him to follow, to do something more than merely observe. Against all logic and his tightly packed schedule, he walked after the boy who began hurrying down the street. His black shoes clicked softly against the pavement as he maintained a short distance, wondering what he was doing but unable to stop. Finan's small steps carried him past the busy market corners and into an old neighborhood whose paint had long surrendered to time. The buildings were weary, windows cracked, and laundry lines sagged from roof to roof. At last, Finan reached a worn-down apartment complex where plants no longer grew and sunlight barely touched the hallway. The boy stepped inside with the same carefulness of someone carrying a treasure, and Leander followed, feeling the weight of curiosity and concern tightening in his chest. Finan entered a dim room with peeling walls and a mattress pushed near the corner. On it lay a woman, Alara Hale, pale, exhausted, and visibly unwell. The heat of daytime filtered through the small window, yet she shivered under a thin blanket. Finan approached her quietly and placed the hard loaf beside her with a smile that did not match the pain in his eyes. He whispered something soft, an attempt to make her believe everything was okay, but she knew it wasn't. Alara struggled to sit up, apologizing almost in silence for not being able to work, for not having money, for making him worry. Finan insisted she try to eat. Leander, watching from the doorway with an ache he hadn't expected, understood instantly. This small family was drowning, and the world had simply passed them by. For a long moment he remained frozen, caught between intrusion and instinct. He thought of Tess, who was the same age as Finan. She had grown up with everything she needed, yet he constantly feared he wasn't doing enough as a parent. But this was different. This was survival. Finally, he stepped forward just enough to let his presence be known. Alera startled, trying to rise in alarm. Finan stood protectively in front of her, tiny yet brave. Leander raised a hand gently, hoping to ease their fear. All he wanted was to understand how a mother and son could be living like this, starving quietly while the city outside chased luxury and success. Alera, breath unsteady, tried to explain. She worked at a garment factory until a sudden illness left her bedridden. The job didn't offer medical leave, so she was replaced in days. Rent piled up, savings vanished, and Finan began skipping meals so she could eat. She thought the worst would end soon, but it hadn't. And now she could barely stand. Leander felt the hallway tilt slightly as he listened. Something inside him cracked, perhaps the old scars, perhaps the guilt of having lived comfortably while others lived like this. He had always prided himself on discipline, self-reliance, the belief that hard work solved everything. But here was proof that sometimes life was merciless regardless of effort. A child should never have to beg for expired bread. A mother should never have to choose between medicine and food. Without thinking, without planning, Leander made a decision that surprised even him. He arranged for a doctor immediately, using his phone with swift authority. He instructed his driver to bring groceries from the best store nearby. When the doctor arrived and examined Alera, the diagnosis was clear: severe malnutrition, untreated infection, and dangerous stress levels. With proper rest, food, and medication, she would recover. But without help, things could collapse quickly. Finan watched everything with wide, uncertain eyes, struggling to believe any of it was real. Leander reassured him, not with loud promises, but with quiet steadiness. By the time afternoon sunlight brightened the window, groceries filled the kitchen shelves that had been empty for weeks. The doctor administered the first round of treatment, and Alera, weak yet emotional, kept whispering gratitude she did not know how to express. Leander stayed longer than he expected, listening to their story, learning about Finan's love for drawing, and hearing how Alera once dreamed of opening a small tailoring shop. He understood then that what they lacked was not capability but opportunity. In the following days, Leander's routine changed drastically. After dropping Tess at school each morning, he visited Alera and Finan, ensuring food and medication continued consistently. He fixed the broken window, hired cleaners to sanitize the apartment, and helped Alera get gently back on her feet. Finan, once shy and withdrawn, slowly began to laugh again, softly at first, then brightly. He grew close to Tess too, as the children often spent time together drawing or studying. Their tiny world, once fragile, now warmed with possibilities. Alera regained her strength enough to stand and walk without dizzy spells, her cheeks no longer pale, her voice no longer faint. Yet she still could not understand why a powerful CEO would help strangers without expecting anything in return. The truth was that Leander's past held shadows few people knew. After the loss of his wife years ago, he had become emotionally numb, burying himself in work and responsibilities, believing vulnerability was a weakness. But Finan's quiet plea for expired bread pierced through years of self-protection. Helping them felt like healing something inside himself too, something he didn't realize was still broken. Meanwhile, his board of directors noticed the change in him. He smiled more. He listened more patiently. He even brought Finan's drawings to his office and pinned them near his desk. They didn't know exactly what had changed, but sensed that something or someone had reminded him of compassion. Weeks passed, and the day finally came when Alera could walk normally again. Leander decided to go a step further. He wanted not just to help them survive, but to help them rebuild. He offered Alera a job managing a new in-house design unit for his company's corporate merchandise. Her stitching skills were impeccable, and her design simple yet beautiful. It was the kind of opportunity she had once dreamed of but never believed she would receive. She accepted with overwhelming gratitude, promising to work harder than anyone else. Finan received new clothes, better school supplies, and a scholarship sponsorship arranged quietly by Leander. The boy who once begged for hardened, expired bread now ate nutritious meals daily and laughed without fear. His drawings became more colorful, filled with sunshine and open fields instead of dark, cramped rooms. But the greatest change happened not in the apartment or at the company, but inside the hearts of those involved. Leander, who had carried grief like armor, realized that kindness was not a distraction from life's mission, but its true purpose. Alera realized that dignity could be restored even after the harshest storms. And Finan learned that the world still had people who cared, people who stepped in without being asked, people who saw him when no one else did. Their 3 lives formed an unexpected bond, stitched together like the beautiful designs Alera began creating at her workplace. As the sunlight of another bright afternoon streamed through the newly repaired window, Finan sat beside his mother working on his homework while Tess and Leander visited. The apartment felt alive, warm, filled with laughter and the soft aroma of fresh food. It was almost impossible to believe that just weeks earlier, starvation and fear existed in the same space. Tess admired Alera's new uniform and the way she transformed fabric into wearable art. Leander watched Finan happily eating fruit slices, no longer rationing every bite. There was peace in the room, a gentle, sincere peace that only genuine kindness could create. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Stories of Kindness to support more emotional stories that remind us of humanity. Before we end, please leave a special comment saying, "Kindness still lives." And so, under the soft warmth of the daytime sun, a single moment of compassion blossomed into a future none of them had imagined. A boy's timid request for expired bread became the turning point that brought healing, opportunity, and second chances. Because sometimes one simple act of noticing can rescue an entire world.